Gaspard, welcome to the GTM Pack podcast. Super excited to have you on.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you know, because I've told you, I've been following your content on LinkedIn now for a little while and just really, really enjoying it, both as a product marketer, but also as a founder, right? I think you speak a lot to the early stages and the importance of positioning and messaging in those early stages. So I've just found your content to be so valuable. And we've had conversations offline as well. And I just always find your insights really, really relevant and compelling. So just super excited to dig in with you today and share your sort of knowledge with the audience here. But before we get into the meat of it, why don't you give us a little bit of a background on who you are, your career background. And I'd love to hear sort of like, how did you get into product marketing and growth and positioning and messaging and all that stuff that you're focused on today?
First, thank you. What an introduction. That's why all two guests are happy. I'm guessing that I didn't expect that many compliments. And thanks for everything. So, yeah, to give you a background, I worked at growth marketing agencies. So, all of acquisition stuff like lead gen, campaigns, ads, everything. And as I was doing that, I realized that I wouldn't have any impact if I didn't have a proper messaging beforehand, like everything, a nice value proposition, a nice positioning, etc., etc. So I did it on my own, and I started freelancing and getting more and more into that. And that naturally put me into the product marketing field more and more to like I'm going up the ladder into the more strategic point, the more strategic part. And now I've been specializing even more further along to positioning and messaging only. And for B2B SaaS companies, especially founders like yourself. That's why my posts, I try to aim people like you. So that's what I've been doing.
That's awesome. And it's so interesting to hear. I mean, what a great insight to go from growth to this core positioning and messaging. I feel like so many companies, once they get their product out there, they kind of skip that step and they try and go like right to growth, right? And a lot of them, especially if they're
Yeah.
VC backed, right, they have that pressure to do so. And I personally feel, I'm a product marketer, so I'm a little bit biased, but I feel like without that core positioning and messaging, um, you know, your growth is going to be stunted. So it's really cool to see that a growth marketer by trade has recognized that as well, and that you've gone into this space. Um, so I know that you work with a lot of founders, early stage founders on positioning and messaging, and I'm curious, what has that been like? And specifically, like, what do you think the biggest challenges founders face in those earliest stages when it comes to positioning messaging? What are the biggest obstacles you face when you're working with founders on positioning and messaging?
Oh, well, tell me about your challenge, and I'll let you know. No, that I love helping entrepreneurs. So that's why I've been focusing on founders because I think they are doing an amazing job of building their own future, their own business. That's something I really admire and want to help them on. So the early stages are really the most the crucial ones. That's kind of the way to that kind of gives direction on the whole business and the whole strategy you're gonna have to implement and just follow. So at the beginning, they jump into tactics, and they don't really see any improvement. And they realize they need to have this strong positioning, messaging clarified. Otherwise, they will just hit a plateau and never learn anything from what they have been doing. So the biggest challenge would be to have this proper definition of what their positioning and messaging is in order to resonate with target customers. So it's really about having a strategy that's not just on paper or tactics, but something that really resonates and is going to drive some customers, paying customers. And that can be a challenge when you have an innovative SaaS that's quite new, don't have a clear target audience yet, you still have many doubts regarding the use cases you offer. So it's really about clarifying the whole thing and where to focus on. So this challenge is the main one.
Yeah. I mean, do you also find that founders are generally receptive to focusing on positioning and messaging early, or do you find that eagerness to get into growth and like how do you also if that's the case, how do you emphasize the importance of establishing the positioning and messaging before leading into growth?
Well, first-time founders never want to do this kind of strategic work. They all want to jump right away into growing the business, and I totally get it. I understand what they are living and what they want to achieve. But second-time founders, they realize it that what's important actually have to have strong foundation before scaling. So I usually become something. I mean, my offer becomes something they're interested in when they have more a first failure, first
Mm,
acting that failed. They realized that they were investing time and resources into something that was not bringing any growth or learning. So that's more, yeah, this kind of hard realization that without having a strong clarity on this, you're just investing your time, your energy into tactics that don't bring you anything. And that's really this realization that brings them to realizing how important it is to have a strong strategy at the beginning.
yeah, makes total sense. And I can say for myself that I've been through that, right? I've sort of leaned into the growth
We
early
talked about it.
without that foundation, so I know exactly what you're talking about. One thing that I've seen you talk about a lot that has caught my attention is you talk a lot about the importance of differentiation, right? But
Mm,
specifically differentiating without competing on price and features. And I
mhm,
think this is really, really important, but quite nuanced, right? I think as founders that don't have a background perhaps in positioning and messaging and product marketing, the first thing that we do is we differentiate on either features or price, right? We'll say that we're the 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 solution for the early stage market, right? Versus the big enterprise clunky, a high cost solution, or we'll put ourselves side by side with our competitors and feature by feature say we
mm.
have these and they don't have that, right? So tell me a little bit about like how you came to that realization of the importance of differentiating outside of those core areas, and how do you advise founders or companies to differentiate without focusing on features and price?
Well, when you get started, you want to compete, you want to show you're the new solution they have been looking for. And the trap is to believe that buyers buy and choose the best software out there. But if that was the case, everyone would take HubSpot or Salesforce as CRM. There would be only two CRM, maybe one on the market, and not hundreds or thousands as there are right now. But because actually buyers don't take the best software in terms of the most advanced or the cheaper. They take the one that's most relevant to what they are trying to achieve. And when you are a founder and you try to compete and you put yourself in the really the comparison stage where you unconsciously put yourself in a bad posture where people you're gonna force your prospect to compare you on all the different lists you have, all the features, capabilities, etc. It's actually putting you in a liability, in a risky position. Whereas when you target a specific use case and you really differentiate on how you're gonna be the most relevant, the more precise for the specific situation, you become the obvious choice. And it, buyers don't even compare you anymore because they know you're the one for this specific use case they're trying to achieve. So the clients I have on messaging and positioning at the issue of, okay, how can we explain our value is better than others and is the better way? Because that's what we believe in, that's what we've seen. And the problem is that when they have been trying to do it by comparing, and it puts them really in this difficult position, and they don't grow anymore. Whereas when you kind of differentiate in terms of the use case or maybe the branding or the business model, you create a strong positioning around a specific use case and you get known for it. So even if you have to say no to some opportunities, but the one you say yes to drives growth and word of mouth, a strong positioning, a better awareness around you and your expertise. So it's actually about making the hard choice of where to focus on and what's the use case, the target audience, the one thing we should be the greatest at, and that making that hard choice is actually what drives the growth. And my work is to help them uncover how to make this choice, and we go through customers interview, market analysis, research, and all of tests and trials, plus getting an external opinion is what makes this mix work. So differentiation isn't something as really I'm trying to focus on, but that's because that's a way for them to show why their SaaS is valuable in a crystal clear way. Does
Yeah, it
that
makes
answer your question?
yeah, no, makes total sense. And one thing that I'm hearing here, and I love your perspective on this as well. We talked about how founders struggle with focusing on positioning and messaging before growth. Let's say first time founders, right? Another thing that personally I think they struggle with that you've kind of highlighted here is niching down, right? And uh, finding like really getting narrow in terms of who you're specifically going after and what use case you're built for, right? And that's like to your point, that's the way to differentiate, not feature by feature, not to play in this bigger category and compete feature by feature, but to find your sort of sliver of a market within that category to position yourself. Do you think that's another thing that founders struggle with? Like, they might feel like I need to go after a bigger market, or I need to, like you said, I'd be missing opportunities if I wasn't, kind of
Yes.
building my positioning for all these different ideal. Is that another thing that they struggle with?
FOMO hits hard for every founder, even solos, freelancers, everyone who has his own business. It has this FOMO of this fear of missing a new market, a new opportunity. And that's actually why the most founders get stuck in this race to more features, more capabilities, more use cases, because they believe there are more technicalities and more advanced solutions actually put them ahead in the race. But that's just how they perceive on the technical aspect where they know the market. But what's the race actually is not on capabilities or lower price. It's in the perception in the buyer's mind. So that's the real race. So who is the leader in this category? Oh, it's the first name that comes to mind, the one that's specific for my use case, the most relevant. That's the race you want to win, and you want to be the first name. And founders, when they are building and they see in every sales call, oh, but how are you better than this solution? Or I'm going to choose this one because they have this feature. They have this false, wrong
Yeah.
signals that give them the idea that they should add more features and different products to differentiate. But that's just a race that never ends, because with the AI especially, everyone can build feature at a lightning speed. So you don't want to put your business at the risk of new competitors that pop up with your new tech they copied, or it's going to be an endless race. So it's hard to get out of it and build really something that's known for one thing, and that's really hard to do when you have so many different options at your end and you have to say no to those opportunities.
Yeah, you even have me thinking now about Asset Mule and our own.
Yeah.
I've sort of built the business intentionally with that in mind, and even so, as you're talking, I'm like, man, I think we could even go more narrow. We're still going too wide. It's really, really hard. And I'll tell you what's even harder is to do this later. If you haven't started there, at a previous company that I was at, we went too broad, and this was already at the Series B stage. We never gone really niche, right? We had always gone too broad. And at that point, we raised our Series B. We had hired salespeople, we had hired CS people, and they all have goals, right? Salespeople have revenue goals, and CS people have retention and growth, upsell goals, and so on. And at that point, trying to get people to narrow and say, you know what, you're going to have to churn those customers because we're no longer serving them, or we're not going to sign that deal that you're working on because they're a bad fit customer, is even harder, right? So getting that right at the earliest of stages is like so critical, because I tell you what, later, now you're going to have to battle a ton of people to make it happen, right? So it's such a great point, I think.
But there are really two stages of difficulties regarding this. The first one is when you're really early and you have to learn to choose the right opportunities and not just go after everything. I mean, that's not mandatory, because when you're trying to get a business off the ground, actually, it's not a bad thing to go everywhere, because you need to have some, trials and errors to find what works and build your MVP and have enough revenue to get going. So I think it's not a bad choice to go broad, But actually, when you have customers, that's when it gets tough because you have to learn to say no to the revenue you could and you already have. You have to churn them
Yeah.
intentionally, as you said. And it's really about the numbers usually. Like when the investor says, no, you could address this target market and this one, because investors want growth. But you want sustainable growth because you're a founder. So you want your business to thrive and not just expand for the valuation. So it's a different mindset, and it's really about finding where you're the greatest at and not just going after everything you're good at. Otherwise like you build a risk on your own because you're not strengthening your market fit. You're making it broader but at the same time weaker, whereas you want to have a so strong positioning and market fit that your business is going to last. And even if you have some highs and lows, it's going to thrive because you'll get known for one thing. And that's really this balance of making this hard choice. And that, I think, has to come with numbers. When you see all the customers you have and you have this stats and data that prove which one are the best one for you, it's when to pivot. With you have to this realization of, okay, we are the best for this. We are the best for this use case. Let's pivot and let's niche down. But don't niche down on firmographic or demographic. Niche down on your use case. That's really something I want to
Yeah.
mention.
Yeah,
Like
it's
as a
really
community.
interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting because you're speaking to like exactly what we're going through right now as a company. In fact, I'm reaching out right now to our best, most active customers to learn more about like why you're so active, like what are you doing, like why is this so valuable for you, so that I can get a better sense of like who they are and what their use case is, right? And really niche down on that because we're about a year in to us having a product in the market. And we
Yeah.
had an idea of what this product was going to be used for, but it started getting used for all kinds of different use cases. And like any founder, you get really excited every use case that comes up, and some of them don't work, right? Some of them are like, oh, it was really exciting and interesting, but it didn't really work for that. So that customer is going to churn. And it's like, you have to be okay with that to a certain extent. And sure, there's things to learn there. And I think a lot of people say, learn from your losses, learn from your lost customers. But I actually think actually focusing at, these guys, on the other hand, they're super active and they're getting tons of value. Let me go talk to them, right? Let me figure out what
Yeah.
they're doing and how I can learn and replicate that, and really lean into that use case. I think is a really interesting insight.
The hard thing on this is to find what makes a good use case. Like
Mm,
when you have multiple use cases, you may think, okay, we get more revenue from this one, so they are the best customers, or we get more traction on this one, so they are the best. And actually, there is no right answers. It's really about the mix and the balance between all of different metrics. So sometimes, okay, you have more revenue with this one, but this segment adopts your solution in like 2 minutes compared to 2 weeks.
mm,
Maybe you're gonna accelerate your process internally. This one is as refers more users, so maybe you're gonna grow more exponentially with this one. So it's kind of taking a step back and realize, okay, this is all metrics we have, everything data we have, and then getting into calls if you need to. But it's really just not just following revenue, it's following really traction and really the market fit more than the, the revenue and all the FOMO you have with your competitors and the potential markets investors detect you.
yeah, for sure. There's a couple things I wanted to ask you because I'm a big fan of sort of like content that goes a little bit against the status quo, maybe is a little contrarian, right? But kind of like
We all
makes
love
you
the
think.
drama.
Yeah. But I really love content that like, as you dig in, it makes you think, right? And you realize, oh, there's something here. And I found that like you've posted a couple of things that have caught my attention in that way, right?
Cool.
And a couple of things that you've touched on today, but I wanted to dig into a little bit more. So I'm going to call out a couple of like, let's say, first lines in your post, and I'd love for you to unpack it for us a little
You're
bit.
gonna call
So
all my hot takes, all my my clickbait post, and you're gonna call
yeah,
me
yeah.
out on everything I'm saying on LinkedIn. No,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So the first one is a recent one where you started by saying, creating new categories is impossible. So I'd love to hear a little bit more. Obviously, there's more context to it. So I'd love for you to unpack that for us. And what did you mean by that? And what's your perspective on that?
Creating a category is a kind of a myth. Like if you, there's an ocean that's called red ocean and blue ocean that's quite popular. And it's a mirage because everyone believes it's a switch that you're gonna get out of the red competitive crowded markets and enter a brand new one where you're gonna be the only one and you the go-to solutions. Whereas when you look at the real life examples, new categories, as you think of it, are actually existing segments within categories because you can't, except if you have the funds for 10 years or if you have uh, the magical solution that's going to make the whole market interested. You don't have the time or the resources to educate people to a new way of doing something. You can educate them to a better way of doing something, but that means you are already in the same category, just a different segment, and you're trying to replace an existing one. But you can't create from scratch a new type of solution. And the example with the problem with that is that many people believe they can create a category, and they tend to invent everything because they have a new innovative solution, and they believe they have to invent the terminology, the naming, everything that's related, and they end up not resonating with anyone because people don't understand what they do. So the problem that I have with this is that when you think you can create a category, you don't put the customers in your as a center of your reflection. You put yourself at, oh, I have a solution so good, I'm gonna make a new category out of it. But the reality is that customers are looking for something they understand, and you have to prove to them, okay, this is what you want to achieve, but this is the best way to do so. So you're in the red ocean, but you have to redirect them towards what works best for the alignment as the use case we were talking about. So I have this notion I like, it's the purple ocean. It's the mix
Yeah.
of blue and red. It's if you have like the colors. I think I'm gonna name my company like this. I'm not sure yet,
Oh, that's
but
cool.
it's finding this really underserved, hungry segment of the crowded market because there's a proven demand in the red market, in the red ocean.
Yeah.
But you don't want to create everything brand new. You want to find a way to find what they are currently doing and how you can do better than them and prove it to them, not invent some brand new thing. Even the Uber is just a better way to do taxis. Airbnb is a better way to do hotels. ChatGPT is a better way to do Google search.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
just it's a better way. There is no new. It's a myth and a mirage, and it makes a lot of founders just invest and fail, crash the startups because they're trying to educate and invent a lot of things, whereas it's not customer centric.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you. And I come from a space where in the past I did believe in like category creation, and there was some ego to that too. It's like, oh my
Yeah.
God, if you create a category, man, you know. But my favorite sort of markets to go after are those where there is a big established player or a handful of big established players that are um, that are time for disruption, right? They're not serving their customers in a way that is delivering the most value. Um, maybe they're over serving some customers, maybe they're overcharging some customers, or they're just not doing things efficiently. And I feel like that's the prime sort of markets to go after.
Well, the early stage is about finding the right gap for you to have some traction in it. Is re-identifying gaps, and gaps are created from existing markets.
Yeah,
Like every let's say the CRM, which is the most crowded one, when you see some gaps, that's where you can create your own CRM, and the gaps are more into use case again, not the target customers. Because, like, let's say if I look at HubSpot, I have many that target all marketers or marketing-led companies, and you could say there is no gap, but you can see some problem in some specific use cases, like cold emails or outreach on LinkedIn that marketers now do compared to the
yeah,
past. So there's like CRMs like Breakcold or Folk, or tons of new players are trying to find their way through this gap. And it's really the goal of the early stages: find these gaps and where you can have some traction. So really find the underserved segment and find the best way to serve them. So it's really
makes sense.
the
The other
challenge.
the The other one I wanted to ask you about, this is one of my favorites, is you said the hardest part about building SaaS isn't getting first customers, it's letting them go.
That's exactly what we were discussing before. So it's
Yeah.
the first stage. I think you should be broad and be open because you don't have a market fit, you just have an idea. And even better if you co-created it, like if you co-build it with the customers, that would be better for to validate it. But at the early stage, just get customers to get your business off the ground, especially if you're bootstrapped. And then you get data to refine it and refine your market fit. And at this stage, when you know which one is the angle you should take and you should pivot in this direction, it's really hard when you, especially when you bootstrap and you don't have you customers are really your revenue at the end of the day. So you don't want to let them go, but they are draining resources when they are not the best fit. You can maybe you've seen it with Asset Mule when you have some customers that are not the best fits. They're asking you tons of support and they don't really understand the tool before at the beginning, from the get-go. So it's really about the hard choice of letting customers go because they are your revenue and you want to help them, but it's for a better segment that you should address. So it's really painful to watch, but it's why uh, most founders look for external advice or guidance at this stage.
Yeah, no, this one resonates so much. As a founder, every churn, every lost customer it stings, right? And it hurts in many different ways. It hurts in that you have revenue goals that you want to achieve. You're trying to increase that MRR. You're trying to get to profitability, perhaps. And any churn customer, regardless if they're a good fit or not, is pulling you back from that, or headwinds on your path to that, right? At the same time, deep inside, you got to tell yourself, you know what, in that case, I know that they weren't the right customer. And usually that even like ahead of that, that they're a churn risk, right? And it's coming at some point. And you just got to focus your attention on those that are the right fit. But it's a hard thing to do. It hurts for sure.
Well, it feels like a failure, but it's not.
Yeah,
It's and especially in bootstrap companies where the customers are the one you onboarded yourself.
yeah,
Maybe they are the people you care about, your first revenue, the first paying ones.
yeah.
But that's you have to take a step back and realize it's for the best for the business. So that's hard to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, for sure. Last one, and you talked a little bit about this relevance. I think you use that a lot, and
Mm.
you talk about relevance a lot and how crucial it is in marketing and sales. You explained a little bit. Maybe you can unpack that a little bit more for us. And specifically, I'm interested in hearing like how do you coach founders on ensuring that relevance is at the center of their marketing and their sales strategy.
The relevance affects everything you do: positioning, messaging, sales. When I said the buyers don't choose the best or the most advanced software, but the most relevant for the situation, it's exactly that. Because you believe that the buyers from big enterprise companies, they choose the well-known software, like again, the CRM, let's say Salesforce. But actually, it's because they are trying to get reassured and they want some established players so that they risk that choice. So that's why Salesforce is relevant to them. But if you say precisely, okay, I help companies at the 5 million era where we have a sales team of 3 people to manage the communication and who have better sales velocity, and you have really the specific use case, then you can become the number one choice, no matter your size or how established you are, because you pinpoint the problem so well that you are perceived as the best solution for this use case. And relevance is really often misunderstood because when you are doing marketing and sales, you are pressured to get some result fast.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, you have this ambition of founders and investors to target all different markets at the same time. So the salespeople have to adjust it and they kind of manage with to adjust their speech and their pitch to the buyers that are in front of them. But the marketers, they struggle a lot to get some results in B2B because when you are not relevant online, people just scroll on or leave the website or don't click anywhere. And that's because you're targeting two different people and you're being too generic, and that's about relevance. So let's say your website is about you claim you're helping them grow. That's what everyone is trying to do in B2B. That's not relevant for me. That's not precise enough for me to care. And the opportunity for founders is to see by themselves, oh, if I have this exact pitch that matches exactly my prospect situation, I'm gonna close. And they know it when they see it, when they have a perfect match, they close. And what Asset Mule actually is good at, I think, is to have this specific way to create assets or to find a way to be extremely relevant with the prospect in front of you to increase your chances of closing the deal, because in the end you want to be perceived as the go-to solution, and the go-to solution is the most relevant one, not the most known or established. That's if your buyers are looking for to be reassured, not if you're looking for to achieve their goals. So it's about a balance. It's not one answers. It's a mix of different things, but relevance is really key to every customer acquisition strategy, campaign, or whatever.
Yeah, that's cool to hear that Asset Mule can play a role in that. I appreciate that. I actually wasn't even thinking in that direction, although it is so core to what we do. I was just thinking about our own business and trying to be most relevant for our clients. But cool to hear that we can play a role in the journey of others as well. Gaspard, this was amazing. Like as I said to you before, I'm a big fan of you. I'm a big fan of your content. A
Thanks a
lot of the
lot.
things that you post resonate with me, and I'm sure with other founders. So I'm super excited to have had the opportunity to chat with you. I'm super excited to continue following you and learning from you. If others listen to this episode and they want to follow you, they want to learn more from you, what's the best place for them to? Where's the best place for them to go to connect with you and learn from you?
Well, as you said, thank you first, but I post a lot on LinkedIn as my place, so you can follow me there. I'm trying to restart not a newsletter, but create a few articles to go more in depth on these topics. So if you want to check it out, it's on my LinkedIn. Just you can see what if you want, and if you like it, you can just follow me on there. But that's it. And reach out if you need my help on differentiating your SaaS and uncovering your opportunity for this.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for your time, and have a good day over there.
Thanks a lot for the invite, Justin, and take care. See you soon.